It was just a weekend project that I did with my son, and I'm just so delighted at the worldwide reaction to it, the mix of the art of David Bowie and the reality of what we're doing on the space station has just been mesmerizing for so many people.
Has the whole thing been surprising for you, just the incredible reaction there's been to everything you've done up there?
It's been really delightful. We worked really hard for a long time, and the Canadian Space Agency and everybody at NASA. But to have the technology on board, to be able to invite people to come and see what we're doing with social media and videos up and down, it was the result of a lot of work, but the impact of it and the echoes of it, they are surprising. It's worldwide. It's amazing to see.
So it was a deliberate thing, being that engaged. I mean, we've never had an astronaut who's engaged with people so much.
I was fantasizing about it as a 9-year-old kid, you know, and I would have loved to have had the chance to meet with an astronaut or to be brought on board the lunar lander, you know, the way that it's possible now. I just resolved to myself when I was chosen as an astronaut 21 years ago that if I ever get the chance, I am going to do my absolute best to use the technology to share that experience. It's too rare to keep to yourself.
Sure, we've got some questions from viewers to ask you, but I mean, the thing that comes through from everyone really, how is it up there? What's it like?
It's like magic. The most magic thing is that you can fly. It's as if someone tapped you on the head and said, you can fly. It's a superpower. But every time you float by the window, the world is pouring by underneath you at 8 kilometers a second, which is surreal as well. And you're doing all these experiments. It's a complicated thing, a technical thing, but it's also an inherently beautiful thing, and it's intoxicating and addictive to be able to have that experience.
So do you miss it now?
Actually, I try and never miss anything. I don't spend much time looking backwards. It occurred to me today, I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my launch, and it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm much more interested in the results of it and the opportunity that it brings and what the problems they're facing today up on the space station and all the other things going on.
Now, I saw today NASA reporting a problem, the crew not in any danger, but one of 2 large coolant loops on which the electrical systems ride shut down.
I'm intimately familiar with those coolant loops.
I'm sure you are. So I just saw this on my computer when I came in this morning, but did that sort of thing happen all the time? I mean, how dangerous is it out there? No,
it's fairly rare, and it's a significant impact. Actually, 4 days before we came home, we had to do an emergency spacewalk to go fix one of those coolant loops. It had sprung a leak. This one, it sounds to me like it's got an internal regulation problem, but with the same sort of effect. If you can't cool the station, I mean, it's plus 150 degrees in the sun there, Celsius. So you have to have active cooling. And if that loop's not working right, they're going to have to power down whole sections of the station. And that means the science isn't getting done, and it's harder for life support and everything. So it's a big deal. They may have to do another emergency spacewalk. It's not life-threatening, but it's a big deal.
I get the idea, though, that from all the prep that you've done, those hundreds of hours, nothing really worries you up there because you are so well prepared. Is that true, or do you get nervous?
You know, in the book, I called it visualizing failure. It's kind of a catchphrase instead of visualizing success, but the idea is valid, and that is we spent years and years visualizing failure, and not just worrying about it, but okay, so if this fails, what are we going to do? If this fails and this fails, what are we going to do? And you do that for decades, so that then when you get there and things fail, as things always do, it isn't something that just frets you or takes you to the end of your rope. Instead you go, okay, this happened, now we know what to do, let's do all these things, and you feel composed and optimistic about things.
I am going to get to your questions in a moment, all those viewers who have written in. Just indulge me for a minute more, because I know when you've been in space it must be very difficult to decide where to go on holiday, but I was so thrilled to read that the place that you want to go to most on Earth is?
The wine country of the South Island and the north end of New Zealand. It just looks so beautiful with the beautiful volcanic mountain just on the south end of the North Island.
Just to interrupt you very briefly, because this is another self-indulgent moment, that's where I grew up, Mount Taranaki. These are your pictures of my mountain, I call it.
So beautiful, that part of the world to come across. And the beauty of New Zealand also is, after you cross New Zealand, you have the long passage across the Pacific. So it's your real last sight of land for what's going to be, gosh, it takes almost a half hour to cross the Pacific. So looking at New Zealand, it's just beautiful.
I mean, these are your pictures, Chris. How many pictures do you think you took?
I took about 45,000 pictures. Wouldn't you? I mean, yeah, it's just too great. But then when I saw one that really came out nicely, I would then tweet it immediately to the Earth, or tweet it within a few days. That island just off of New Zealand there, just a little bit to the east of it. a very photogenic part of the world that you're from.
Yeah, thank you. Just had to get that in there. Have you seen changes in the times you've been up on Earth? Because, you know, we hear so much about global warming and things, and I wonder from space.
Significant. The biggest change that's visible is one of the largest seas. The fourth largest sea on Earth was the Aral Sea, and through deliberate human policy, we got rid of it. We drained the fourth largest sea on the Earth, and now it's basically a desert wasteland, and the glaciers that were downwind on it that counted on the snow effect, the water evaporating and building glaciers, those glaciers are retreating. That's one bad human policy that obliterated one of the biggest seas in the world, and that can happen anywhere. We really need to be better stewards of the planet.
Yeah, I'm really worried the director's about to tell me we don't have much time, so I've got to get through some of these questions from our viewers. I could talk to you for hours about this, my own questions of course, but here's one for you. How significant are money and politics when you stare into the infinite beauty of our universe?
Whenever you do something on behalf of everybody else, the responsibility is really large. You want to make sure that you're spending the money wisely. And the politics, when you get to that scale, and therefore the money, are what enables it. So as you're staring into the beauty of the endlessness of the universe, or the wonder and the grandeur of the world itself, you therefore feel an enormous obligation to make sure that everybody else sees it to the best of your ability. Describe it. Show people what it is that the money and the politics have brought them. The perspective of the world, the oneness of this place that we live on, and the fragility of it in perspective to the universe that's around us. I think it's absolutely vital. There's only one way right now to get there, and that is as a combined effort, and people need to see just what a wonderful opportunity it gives us.
Alan has Facebooked us to say, how did you deal, Chris, with the anxiety about being homesick when you were watching your planet so closely, but you're not able to go home?
You know, I've never felt more connected to everyone than I did when I was going around the planet every 90 minutes. I could see everybody. I could, you know, like Santa Claus. I was going around and around the world, and it was turning underneath me. And you see the repeated pattern of how we live everywhere. And you just get a sense of us, of the whole planet being a bunch of people doing their best, just looking for a little grace and love and trying to raise their children well, no matter where they are around the whole planet. You get that sense of shared community. And with social media, I could hear directly from hundreds of thousands of people. So to me, yes, I had some distance, but the loneliest people live in cities. You know, right downtown, there are all sorts of lonely people. I've never met an astronaut who felt lonely. It's a magnificent view of the world, and one that really shows you your place in it. You
mentioned Santa Claus. I'm surprised someone didn't email in and say, did you see him when you were up there passing
we
by?
hung stockings with care over Node 3, and they were full on Christmas morning.
Well,
so,
there you go.
Yeah.
You cracked in.
Yeah.
Here's one about living in space, because I'm sure we could fill many minutes talking about that. Jerry Juniton says, what's it like to shave your moustache in space?
Well, I haven't shaved it off. I started growing it on my 18th birthday. My wife likes my face with a mustache, so I've never taken it off. But
it has its own Twitter page.
Right. Yeah. But it's easy. You just hold a vacuum cleaner hose right up here and just trim it with a set of scissors, and so that your whiskers don't go everywhere. And there's a lot of things a little different. I made videos about I made almost 100 videos with the Canadian Space Agency just to show people what a magnificent, interesting, scientific, and unusual place it is.
We have a great clip of the Peanuts, which were a big hit. We can show people as well. I mean, why did you focus on something like opening a can
I opened this
Peanuts?
can of peanuts, and it suddenly looked like it was full of like flying insects or something, and it startled me. I was going, whoa! And then I realized, oh, it's just peanuts. And I thought, if that looks cool to me, that's going to look cool to everybody. So I just grabbed my iPad and pushed record and just filmed 15 seconds of the peanuts floating, and I don't know, 6 or 7 million people watched it as well because they found it surprising and interesting. And when you suddenly change one big variable, you take away gravity, suddenly a lot of subtle things change. And that's where you invent new stuff. And with the 200 experiments we have on the space station are taking advantage of that. But there's also just that sense of human invention and delight and culture that goes along with it.
A question from Ben, who put together, our producer, all of these images for us and that you took. He was really curious to know about laundry, clothing, that kind of thing.
I think everyone would like it. I mean, laundry is very water intensive, and we're very water short on the station. So we just wear our clothes until they're worn out, then we throw them away. But it's not as bad as you think, because you and I are sitting on our clothes right now, and our clothes are hanging on our body, so they get dirtier. In space, your clothes just float next to you. So
even your underwear?
Well, even your underwear just floats next to you. And also we use wet wipes, so we're very tidy.
Lots and lots of wet wipes.
so your clothes last longer, but we just wear them until they're truly worn out and used up. And then we throw them away. They go into one of the unmanned resupply ships, and it burns up in the atmosphere. So eventually they just get incinerated. But there's no laundry, no washing up, no dishes to do. It's kind of a bachelor's paradise, I guess.
Anything tasty to eat in this bachelor's paradise?
You're always congested because there's nothing to drain your sinus without gravity. So you want food with a real extra flavor. And so actually shrimp cocktail was the best, because even though it's dehydrated, because the shrimp has sort of a nice crunch, you know what shrimp it's like to bite into, but they put a horseradish sauce on it, and it's almost like a burst of decongestant eating horseradish sauce on shrimp. So shrimp, I recommend the dehydrated shrimp cocktail on the space station.
If you're young and you want to be an astronaut, what are the qualities that you think that you have that sort of single you out from so many other people and that you need to have to be an astronaut?
Well, you need to be patient, for sure, and you need to be able to commit your life to something that probably won't happen, and enjoy everything that happens along the way. That's kind of the key.
That you train and train and then you don't get to go up?
Yeah, I mean, if you set your heart on being whatever, a senior position like you have here within this organization, there were lots of reasons that would never have happened. If you had made it your measure of success, then all the things that happened on the way here would have been kind of pointless. But if you, and the same thing, to be an astronaut, the odds are terrible. But if you pull your life in a direction that is interesting to you, if you said, you know, someday I want to be the nightly news anchor on BBC, then you might recognize that every single step as you work your way along and become part of that organization, obviously it's where your heart is, and you enjoy the whole trip along the way. And of course you need all the skills, and you need to focus yourself, but the fact that you're pursuing something in the distance that draws your life in a direction that you love will make for a better life regardless, especially if you remember to enjoy it as it's actually happening, and not just count that one thing at the end as your personal measure of success or failure.